kidnapping, mind melding. Linda's claim may sound nutty, but Rick Moran, a New York cop turned journalist, thinks that Linda and all the other witnesses are telling the truth. He lives in Texas, and Natalie's on her way to meet him. 20 years after the Mothman phenomenon, Moran decided to investigate the story and has come up with some chilling new theories about the unexplained creature. Listen to this.
That was in the time when the United States government was involved in drug testing, mind control. The government doesn't use that term, but that's pretty much what it was. So I started to think, I wonder if this could have been some type of a mind-controlled experiment. I found out that at the time that these things had actually happened, the U.S. Navy did have a research facility outside of town. So I thought, well, maybe that's a possibility. Maybe this is some type of a new weapon. If what had happened in Point Pleasant back in those days had been military experimentation, by now we would be seeing something that looks like Mothman flying over the deserts of Iraq. We don't have that technology. We're not doing it.
So if not a secret military weapon, then what?
What it came down to is simply that people did see UFOs, for whatever those UFOs were. I'm not saying that they're intergalactic. I'm not saying that they're time machines. I don't know what they are, but they're unexplained, and they were flying.
Well, let's start off with Mothman. I mean, we spoke to a few eyewitnesses ourselves, and they were truly terrified by their experiences, and this was 30 or 40 years later. Mm-hmm. What do you think Mothman actually is or was?
After you hear the same answers over and over and over again, and you can't shake anybody from it, what's the choice? The choice is that they did see something, okay? And they did have these visitations, and it was real. People were terrified in Point Pleasant years later over, these visitations. But when it involved people, who were good, solid citizens and who weren't drunks and weren't on drugs and, had families and went to work every day, and they start talking about visitations like that, you suddenly realize that there's got to be something more to it. And the more we dug, the more we realized that we were dealing with true unexplained phenomenon, for whatever that is. But it certainly wasn't natural.
Well, tell us about your bizarre experiences, because you actually had your phone tapped, didn't you?
I would make telephone calls out and be interrupted. The line would go dead. It had never had that problem before. Several times we would get telephone calls and the caller would explain exactly where my children were in the house. That's an impossibility unless you're inside the house. Okay, it was a big house. 20 years after the initial situation at Point Pleasant, and yet somebody was going to a great deal of effort to try to make a point with me.
And it was obviously something that didn't want you investigating Mothman any further. Who was behind this?
What you're really asking me is what's behind the phenomenon, and there is a wide variety of answers. From Mothman is some type of a creature, possibly extraterrestrial, that hovers around our Earth, causing havoc, or something more sinister, which is a massive mind-controlled experiment that would have to be government-related, which means that it's the biggest conspiracy theory of them all.
Extraterrestrials? Thought control experiments? Men in black? Creepy stuff, my darlings. Creepy stuff. But is there a more down-to-earth explanation? The TNT plant where most of the Mothman sightings occurred today is a nature reserve known as the McClintic Wildlife Management Area. Could it have been a rare bird species that people were actually seeing? The Natural Mystery Unit will go to the old TNT site to have a look for themselves.